I have students who come to school after a weekend where mom or dad were dragged to jail because of domestic violence. We're dealing with children who have drug and alcohol in their families. We're dealing with homeless children. There are many families who are suffering from depression and the parents are not really available to the students. We have single parent families where in order just to maintain the basics of food, clothing, and shelter, mom has to work, or dad, 24/7.
As a principal assistant at Bemis, which is a pretty good sized high poverty, high needs school in Spokane schools, it's a Title I school, we have over 250 of our kids that we know come to school with trauma, and that's out of 480 kids.
When we talk about complex trauma, what we're really referring to is a cluster of experiences that kids are going through, typically in their family environment, although you could be also looking at things like community violence, school violence, violence against peers. But the hallmark of the experience is that the trauma is persistent, but it's episodic, which means that kids always have to be anticipating that next bad thing that's going to be happening to them.
The field of understanding how it affects learning and how it affects brain development is fairly new. Students generally have trouble or can have trouble with relationships and attachment. Another would be behavior and the inability to self-regulate their behavior. So we see attention deficit disorder, you might see oppositional defiant disorder, you may see just a withdrawal and a just complete detachment for some kids in the school environment. So you're going to see it manifest in many different ways.
You know, I think we always knew that kids were bringing issues to school, and we've always known that there were problems, and we know of kids that have issues that come to school, and we've always expected them to leave those little bags at the front door and come on in and read. We're going to do this, we're going to do that, and now we know that can't happen.
Most people connect trauma with just trauma. They don't understand the difference between post-traumatic stress disorder and this thing called complex trauma. As we looked at this, I think all of us have been looking for years for an idea and a set of terms which helps integrate a whole variety of experiences which we know have adverse impacts on children and have the capacity to create lifelong trajectories of difficulty and failure to succeed in school, inability to hold a job. Some people would say a trajectory even to prison. And about 10 years ago, a man by the name of Bessel van der Kolk made the differentiation between post-traumatic stress disorder and complex trauma, supported by the science of neurodevelopment. I mean, we can see how it is that these adverse childhood experiences actually create different biology inside a child's brain, which results in different kind of brain chemistry, physical chemistry, which really is the basis for human behavior and how it is that we have the capacity or don't have the capacity to respond to the kinds of challenges that are put in front of us.
Trauma and trauma exposure and the impacts of traumatic stress have usually been thought of as kind of a clinical problem with a clinical set of responses. So kids who have post-traumatic stress disorder or adults who have post-traumatic stress disorder, and they go and they see a therapist and then they're treated with a set of clinical interventions, and that's where it stops. And so we typically think of our formal systems, our mental health treatment systems, our child welfare systems, as the systems that are going to be the ones that respond to the kids that have this need. But what we know is that most of the kids who are experiencing this stuff don't ever reach those formal systems. In fact, 1 in 5 kids actually has a diagnosable mental disorder in this country, in the general population, but less than 10% of those kids actually ever receive a service. And so what we started to look at was, how do we get this information out into the general community, particularly to the systems that have universal access to all kids? And that's what brought us into the early learning environments, and particularly to K-12 education, because a lot of kids have a lot of stuff going on with them, and they're all going to bring it to school.
It really comes down to this, very simply put. It's to help children be able to create attachments, help children learn how to regulate themselves and their behavior, and it's to help children learn how to gain the confidence from having gained competencies. What we did was we began building curriculum, building training, and began working with schools and school districts around how it is that this information is relevant to a major issue that they encounter, which is this issue of social emotional learning in children. How do they engage with children who are experiencing difficulty inside K-12 and other kinds of settings? They found it immediately relevant. These people, these folks who work very, very hard in almost impossible circumstances because of the expectations that are currently on people in K-12, were very eager for a set of ideas and an approach that was integrative across the silos, if you will, that they work within.
I do believe there's hope. I think the hope lies in educating staff, in strategies that do work for kids. WSU's been able to come in and do quite a bit of staff training. We've done training with teachers, whole staff in some buildings, administrators, counselors, our mental health therapists, social workers, instructional support specialists. And so we're trying to get the information and knowledge out so that they can then go back to their buildings and work with teachers in the classrooms and take a look at strategies that'll be more effective for kids.
My role, I would say over 75% of it is with discipline, and that I think that is one way that the complex trauma has changed our practice here at Bemis, because it used to be that discipline was walking through steps. 3 pinks and then a white slip, that's a phone call home, that's a consequence, and now we know that that doesn't work. Our kids are already experiencing trauma. They don't need more trauma from consequences that might be unrealistic. So now we're looking at every kid, we're looking at their experiences, we're looking at how they handle consequences, how they handle their daily things that come up in their lives. They need to be held accountable, but we need to do it in a way that validates where they're coming from, validates their trauma that they're going through, and yet shows them that here's the expectation and here's your accountability piece, but we still care about you.
The initial response to the work on complex trauma has been, oh my gosh, I needed this, I get it. It's so impactful for people who have perhaps never really thought about the implications of trauma on kids' ability to learn. And those people, be they teachers or administrators, completely understand and feel, I think, like it's an aha. Of course that's what's going on for children. And then they want more, and they want more, and they want more, and they want more.
What's been most important for me is I have come up with the term my trauma lens, which I think I've always had. I thought I was pretty sensitive to trauma, but I really wasn't till this year. And it's been huge as far as handling different situations. I used to want results. I wanted to walk over. I wanted what I said to be listened to, and I wanted what I said to be done right away. And if it didn't happen, then I would just battle with that student. And now I approach it before, like, how can I help this student? Not just with this assignment, but with whatever's actually happening in their life. It's made all the difference in the world this year. So I have way more respect from my students, and I'm respecting them a lot more too.